Rage, written by J. Carrale Jones, narrated by Lauren Sweet. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See the description for the timestamp.
I gotta get out. The rage burns deep inside me. The heat makes me insane. I gotta rage! I took the drug for fun, it made me feel great. All the power in my hands, lust, power, and rage. I gotta get out of this cage. Otherwise, I'll do nothing but rage. I don't understand this feeling, it consumes me from within. Trying to escape this feeling of pain, to fight and be angry. It has to be my rage. I gotta kill and maim, consume and burn, destroy and crush. Burning inside me is hate. Nothing to do but rage. I have one thought and it's clear. Rage. Nothing else but rage. Kill, murder, and crush. Nothing to do but rage. But rage. I have one thought and it's clear. Rage. Nothing else but rage. Kill, murder, and crush. Nothing to do but rage. But rage. I have one thought and it's clear. Rage. Rage. Nothing else but rage. Kill, murder, and crush. Nothing to do but rage.
Icarus's Flight. Mary, the flight attendant, smiled as she walked past me. Like the others, she was slim with dark hair. She had a natural way about herself and smiled easily. Earlier, she had brought me a gin and tonic with peanuts. We made small talk until she mentioned her sister served in Iraq, the first invasion. We had something in common, and an instant bond formed. She worked the aisles, and every now and then she made her way to my side. Eye contact was always intense. We smiled, with both of us licking our lips. She'd shift her gaze and would move on, our little game together. Then, he walked by. I first saw him at the ticket gate. He looked normal enough, but there was something off about him. He was handsome, tall, toned. Grunge seemed to be his choice in clothing. Today, it seemed more so. I watched him when he handed his passport to the ticket agent. They chatted. She even laughed. So why was I put on edge? His eyes. They were not right. He had been high on something and was just starting to come off it. I would have guessed meth. He was probably starting to tweak. So when he walked by me, I took notice. He stepped into an unoccupied lavatory. The pilot had just turned off the fasten seatbelt sign several minutes ago, and the cabin stirred to life. Mary walked by and asked if I needed anything. I said, yes. She smiled and said, absolutely. She came in close and whispered, Once, midway over the Atlantic, things will be very quiet. She then stood up. Another gin and tonic? I returned the smile. Yes, please. Thank you. She got an order from the guy next to me. When she left, he leaned over to me and whispered, "Lucky you." I laughed. She makes a great gin and tonic. He laughed too. He started to say something when it happened. We heard a roar behind us. It was extreme and primal. Grunge yelled, "I gotta get out!" He was naked and his face was scrunched up demonically. A woman turned to move out of his way. He grabbed her hair and pulled hard toward him. His teeth bit deep into her scalp. She screamed as he broke bone. Another passenger punched him in the face. Grunge released the woman and fell back. He got up and pounced on the man. Teeth sank into his neck and blood squirted everywhere. I undid my seatbelt and jumped out into the aisle. I spotted a laptop and grabbed it. I remembered saying, "May I?" as I lifted the laptop over my head and came down hard on Grunge's skull. He yelled louder, dropped the man, and came after me. I kicked him in the chest hard enough to break brick. He brushed the kick off and backhanded me. The laptop took most of the force. He ran over me and headed for the cockpit. A flight attendant tried to stop him. He raged harder, hit her in the shoulder. She screamed as her collarbone snapped. He crashed into the door, roaring. The door held for several moments, then caved in. Someone yelled, "What the? Get out!" I stepped back out into the aisle and headed toward Grunge. I could see him swinging at the pilot and co-pilot. Then, the pilot pulled out a gun and fired 3 shots into Grunge's chest. He raged more. Someone screamed and the plane banked sharply. The navigator swung and hit him in the head. Grunge swung back hard, and I heard a deep-sounding crack. Another shot, and Grunge came out dragging the navigator. His body was limp. I was about to hit Grunge in the head again when the air marshal appeared. He ran up to Grunge, jabbed a small stun gun in his neck, and sparked the device. Grunge tossed the navigator aside. He swung and connected with the marshal's right arm. The stun gun released, hit the side wall. Grunge punched the marshal in the jaw, breaking it. The marshal spit a dozen teeth out and reached for something in his jacket pocket. Grunge kicked him in the chest. The marshal fell back, but true to his training, he had his gun out with his left hand and double-tapped. Grunge stopped cold as both bullets hit him between the eyes. I reached the marshal and he fainted. "Flight attendant!" I snapped. One came up and cradled the marshal's head between her legs. I got up and stared at a lifeless Grunge. Blood soaked the carpet from the gaping wound at the back of his head. The plane banked sharply again, dropped some, then leveled out. I ran to the cockpit. Blood was nearly everywhere. An unconscious captain had deep scratch marks over his face. I could tell his right eye was a lost cause. The co-pilot was slouched over the wheel, his left shoulder dislocated, and the right forearm broken. I yelled, "We need some help in here. Is there anyone with medical training?" Mary appeared with several people, including a middle-aged woman and 2 younger men. The woman said, "I'm a GP." The 2 guys were both med students, one in his first year, the second graduating soon. We eased the captain out of his chair and into the aisle. Grunge had been dragged out of the way by some of the passengers. The co-pilot refused to leave. I pulled out my ID and said, "United Nations Agent Bechard," and sat in the pilot's seat. The co-pilot said, "I can't leave my post. I have to land this thing." I replied, "How? 1 dislocated shoulder and a broken arm." He winced in pain and said, "Then sit there and help me fly this bird." I nodded and buckled myself in. One of the med students secured the co-pilot's arm to his side. Before that, he discovered broken ribs. He set the broken arm before splinting it. The co-pilot said, "My bag, over there. I've ibuprofen in there." Mary had a cup of water already in hand. The med student, Patrick, held the bottle. He gave the co-pilot 8 200-milligram tablets. The co-pilot washed them down with the water. After a few moments, he said, "Damn maniac. What the devil was he on? I shrugged. I thought he was coming off a meth high before takeoff, but this rage is nothing like a tweak. He winced and straightened himself up. He checked the instrumentation and fumbled to put the headset on. Mary helped. I put the captain's on. Mary had a sorrowful expression. I looked her way and gave a lopsided smile. Her features softened. She said, "Miss Bechard, please call me Karen." "Karen, can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea?" I let the pause linger some seconds, smiled, and said, "Coffee would be great." She smiled my way, turned, saw the blot of blood, frowned, and headed toward the back. From my vantage point, I could see most of the business class was empty of live passengers. It was now the morgue. Grunge and 2 other bodies were seated with blankets over them. One flight attendant was standing nearby, crying. The co-pilot communicated to LaGuardia that we had a situation. He looked beaten, figuratively and literally. I was staring ahead when the co-pilot asked, "Miss Karen, right?" "Yeah," I said. "Call me Martin." "Okay, Martin. How are you feeling?" "Like shit. Bastard." I nodded. "I ain't never seen anything like this. Hold." LaGuardia Tower gave Martin a frequency and heading. He responded, "LaGuardia, Delta 0909, starting turn in a few. How's traffic?" "Delta 0909, traffic has been diverted. The sky is yours. Move to 220. He placed his hand over the mic. "Karen, that soft key, off center." I hovered my finger over the display screen. He nodded. "Yeah, that one. Press." I did. "Turn that knob over there to 220. He puckered his lips to a knob. "Peni, huh?" He chuckled. "Yeah, 13 years now." I turned the knob until 220 displayed on my front screen. He reached over with his splinted right arm and pressed several buttons. The plane turned on its own. He spoke in his mic again. "LaGuardia 220. LaGuardia answered and gave him several more questions. He answered, finished, and sat back. Mary entered with a tray. A coffee pot, cup, sugar, cream, and pastry were on it. I said, "1 sugar, no cream, please," and took a pastry. "We have a few minutes before landing." Martin paused a long time and finally said, "I'm not sure I'll make it. I feel really bad." "Of course you'll make it," I hoped. "You're gonna have to land this plane. I'm feeling really, really bad. I might pass out on you." "Mary," I said, "get the doctor." A moment later, our GP showed up. She looked into the co-pilot's eyes and said, "He hit you in the head pretty hard, didn't he?" The co-pilot nodded. "I just want..." He never finished. He slumped into the doctor's arms. She called to the med students. They carried him out. I thought, well, we're doomed. Mary stood there for a moment. Tears welled up in her eyes. Without me asking, she slipped into the co-pilot's seat. This one has got to be a keeper, I thought. Her bottom lip quivered as she buckled in and placed the headset on. She gave me a weak smile. I smiled back and switched on the mic. "LaGuardia, this is Delta 0909, United Nation Agent Karen Bechard speaking. We have a situation." Mary looked over at me with mixed emotions. Surprise, shock, disbelief, and relief. The tower answered, "Delta 0909, what's the situation?" "Co-pilot is out. I'm sitting pilot seat and flight attendant Mary." I placed my hand over the mic. She replied, "Hernandez. Hernandez is co-pilot seat. Delta 0909 out." There was a long pause, then, "Delta 0909, we see you holding course. Do you have flight experience?" I answered, "Some, Apache copter, Huey twin turbine 4 passengers glider." "All planes, this is LaGuardia Tower. Secure for emergency landing. Delta 0909, can you locate the captain's radio tuning control? underneath and left of the engine throttles. Turn to frequency 121.65. I found the control and made the change. Mary did the same thing on her side. Tower, both pilot and co-pilot radios are at frequency 121.65. Miss Bechard, you're moving away from us. We have to turn you around. Tower, call me Karen. I'm ready. Instruct away. Okay, Karen. We need to first run through a few things. The altimeter is just left of center. I replied, it's the bottom of the 3 gauges. Airspeed is center. Correct. What is your speed? I said, 270 knots per second. There was a pause. Okay, we need to slow you down a bit. But first, I need you to start making an approach for landing. I read you at 25,000 feet. We need you at 10,000 and aimed back at us. I looked over to Mary. She was studying the controls. The flight manual was in her lap and opened. She was power reading. One of the other flight attendants came into the cabin. Anything I can do? Mary said, Hey Liz, I'd love a drink, but coffee would be best. Can you warm up Karen's coffee, please? Liz stood there for a while, not knowing what to say or do. Mary noticed, looked up, and said, Liz, no worries. Karen has some flight experience, and LaGuardia is walking us through the basics now. We'll be safe on the ground soon. Liz touched Mary on the shoulder. I think she wanted to give her a hug, but left instead with my cup. I closed the mic and said, Mary? She looked up and over to me. Dinner then my place? She smiled and moved a bunch of hair behind her ear. Any restaurant? Tower was talking in my ear. I mouthed, of course, and focused what Tower had to say. Mary and I worked together. We ran down the descent checklist quickly and started working on approach. Tower had us turned around and minutes within the airport. The weather turned from nice to crappy all in an hour. Tower said, Karen, you got wind at southeast. He paused. Wind. Great. Even experienced pilots can find it challenging. I replied, and I thought this was supposed to be a tough landing. Mary hit the fasten seatbelt sign and toggled the cabin intercom on. Ladies and gentlemen, we are starting our approach now. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts. If you haven't done so, please place your tray tables in their upright position. Make sure all loose items are stowed properly. Flight attendants, please secure cabin for landing. She toggled the intercom off and let out a long breath. Delta 0909 is ready for instructions, I said. Talk us through. Tower said we were going to do a side slip. The runway was still dry, so that was one less thing to worry about. We started our descent. Mary toggled intercom. Prepare for descent. We gave each other one last look. I took a deep breath and pulled back on the throttle. Mary dropped the landing gear, and I moved the flaps to 25. The plane descended smoothly. I could make out 22 at the front of the runway. Tower instructed me to adjust rudder and ailerons. I pulled further back on the throttle, further dropping our speed. I've landed turboprops in crosswinds, but doing so in such a huge craft so high off the ground made for a different experience. To my right, I saw the center line of the runway. In front of me was Flushing Bay. I could see the 678 backing up. Then the plane tilted. Tower instructed me to drop my left wing down a bit. I did, and nearly touched ground. I jerked back, and the plane tilted crazily to the right. Tower calmly said, "Don't power steer." Imagine you have an egg sitting on top of the steering wheel and try not to drop it. I turned in, and the plane adjusted. The runway came up fast, and just before the wheels touched, Tower said, "Readjust and point the nose center line." I felt the rear tires contact ground first. As instructed, I dropped the nose down and felt the hard hit of the tires. Mary set the spoilers to up. I engaged thrust reverse. I watched the speed go from 150 knots to 80 knots to 50. I hit the brakes and thought, screw the taxi. This plane is stopping now. Some seconds later, our 747 came to rest. Mary quickly went through turning everything off. I found the APU Gen 1 and Gen 2 switches. We had power. In the background, I heard applause. I was happy to have dodged this bullet and not made a debris path. Mary and I unbuckled. I stepped out and couldn't believe what I saw. In the moment grunge had knocked me down and ran to the cockpit, he ripped several seats to shreds. One armrest was bent out at an odd angle. What was disturbing was the blood splatters. On the windows, the floor, and the seats. The first 3 rows of business had been vacated. I told Mary I had to go and make a report. She said she would, hopefully, be at the airport Hilton. We touched hands briefly, and I took the nearest emergency exit slide. Mary stayed to help evacuate the plane. I made a mental note. Karen, keep this one happy and talk to Vadnez about making her an agent. Having issues. Vadnez sat behind a rather large oak desk. His monitor was off-centered, and a picture of his wife and kids to its right. The desk was polished clean. Neat stacks of reports were to the left of the monitor. He had 3 pencils of the same length next to the reports. The man was so fastidious, I wondered if his wife and kids wondered how hard it would be to hide the body. He was reading my report. After turning a few more papers, he looked up. Miss Bechard, you really should use more active sentences. I nodded and waited. He closed the folder. Interesting. The local coroner thinks he was on APPV. I whispered, bath salt. Vadnez said, you may not know this, but APPV's street name is bath salt. He looked at me. That was my cue. Oh, really? I hadn't known. Miss Bechard, research. How you are one of my most efficient and effective agents is beyond me. I said, luck and karma. I kiss lots of babies and puppies. He stared at me for a long while. I stared back. No one can outstare me, not even Vadnez. He's tried many times, and failed just as many times. He cleared his throat and broke the stare. Huh, I win again, I thought, and forced myself not to smile. This problem is becoming an international issue. I nodded. He grabbed the top folder and handed it to me. Your new assignment. On the cover was a picture of a female scientist. She looked pretty and wore wire-rim round lens glasses. Her hair was light brown. Her skin was sun-deprived pale. She looked 30-something. I looked up. Dr. Dorothy Randers, super genius. IQ well over 200. Her first PhD was at 15. He paused. I could still put a bullet through her head and she'd be dead. Being a wily coyote did not impress me. She was probably an arrogant bitch who would whine and moan if things didn't go her way. I just replied, oh, really? Vadnez smiled. He figured he had my attention. Such an easy study. I would like you to interview her. Does she know she is on our radar? She is not a suspect, Miss Bechard. Miss Hill is on another assignment. Otherwise, she would be doing the interview. I nodded. Catherine Kitty Hill was cool. I liked her. She was good at pulling info from folks. Randers is not a suspect. He nodded. We just need information on a growing problem. She is an expert on drug-influenced behavior. This particular bath salt may be a new variant. Dr. Randers can help us confirm this. I nodded. She is also on retainer to the UN. Ah, the point. We retained her for her brains, and I'm not supposed to piss her off. But, I thought, then don't send me. Pissing people off is what I do best. Understood, sir. Vadnez smiled. He liked it when I said, sir. I collected my things and left. It was this side of 1 p.m., and I was hungry. The UNICEF House cafeteria was still open. They had a new turkey sandwich on the menu, and I was dying to try it. The pictures on the menu looked good, and Chef Schembeck and staff would never uck up a sandwich. After getting the sandwich, I found an empty booth and sat. I allowed myself several delicious bites before I opened Randers' folder. She had a dozen scholarly awards, inventions, and commendations, all before age 20. She's on the Presidential Science Advisory Council and has consulted for NASA and ESA. With each page on Randers, the feeling of cold clinical time bomb increased. Dr. Dorothy Randers, super genius, cold, calculating, sociopath. In her youth, her inventions were about saving and enhancing the quality of human life. At 16 years old, she focused on enhancing personal comfort. At 18, it was about self-indulging. At 20, she focused on building her fortune. She made billions from the stock market and gave not one penny to any charitable organization. She voted independent, rejected all monotheist religions. I couldn't tell if she was spiritual, just not right-winged, or completely alt-right. She had no close personal friends and rarely socialized. She declined most international speaking invitations. I should have admired her, but I didn't. Pity? Concern? Fear? Maybe all of the above. I've met folks with a third her IQ quite dangerous. What would I do if she turned out to be a bad guy? I closed the folder and finished my sandwich. I had a date with a spooky genius. Time for my A-game. I reached Dr. Randers' office by 5. Some eye candy was at the receptionist desk. He looked up. "May I help you?" Total gay. He was beefcake and tall, dark eyes with a 5 o'clock shadow, nice lips and straight, short-cut black hair. Such a waste. I'd love to have road-driven him to exhaustion. I smiled. "Yes, please. Karen Bechard, UN Agent, here to see Dr. Randers." He looked over to a clipboard. "Oh, yes, right here. The doctor said to hold your appointment off a bit if you came early. She's on a call to a governor right now." A governor. I gave him a slight smile and glided my eyes over what I could see of him. "Would you like some coffee while you wait? Water, maybe?" I said, "Coffee would be nice, thank you. No cream, 1 pack of Splenda if you have any." He got up, and I watched him as he walked past and down a short hall. His arms were huge and well-defined. The brachii on both arms were thick and snaked nicely down the biceps length. I would very much be his bottom. "Here you go, Miss Bechard. I added some cookies." I took the coffee and cookies. "Thank you, Guy. You certainly are, Guy." He laughed and smiled sweetly. On him, it looked good. Please tell me you're bi, I raunchily thought. He sat down and started tapping away on his keyboard. Every now and then he would laugh. It would start out slow, like he was looking at something dirty and didn't want anyone to know. Then it would increase in volume and intensity. He was a man who loved to laugh, and laughed often. I looked around the office. It was pleasing to the eyes. Several huge paintings adorned the walls. Randers was into African and Islander motif. On that, I agreed. I could like her about one thing at least. A few minutes later, Guy's phone rang. "Guy speaking." "She is." "Yes. Yes. Very much so." He casually looked over my way. I acted like I didn't notice. He continued. "No, not at the moment. Okay." He started tapping on his keyboard. "You got it? 5 minutes. Okay." He hung up and tapped away again on his keyboard. A minute later, I heard his dirty little laugh. A minute after that, he looked over to me. "Dr. Randers will be over in a few minutes to see you." I nodded and said, "Facebook?" He laughed and said, "How'd you know?" I smiled back. "I'd be doing it too if I wasn't here." He leaned forward. "Did you see the one about giving a shit?" I laughed. That was a good one. A few seconds later, the door opened. Randers stood in the doorway, pissed. I made a mental note, very possessive about hers. She was dressed in a long white lab coat. Underneath that was a gray pantsuit. Her blouse was white. Her hair was pulled back in a bun, and she wore the same metal round-rim glasses I saw in the photo. She stared hard and frowned. I stood up and reached my hand out. "Dr. Randers, I am Karen Bechard, UN Agent." She stared at my hand for a moment, then looked at Guy. He moved his face behind his monitor. I kept my hand out, daring her not to accept it. Nearly a minute went by before she slightly grabbed it and shook once. I wasn't sure if that was a battle won for me or for her. "Miss Bechard, my time is limited. How long will this take?" "As long as it takes." She stared me in the eyes, and I nearly blinked first. Guy coughed, and Randers broke the stare first. "Yes." "You have another appointment in 30 minutes. Mr. Chen from Zentech." Randers nodded. "Follow me into the small conference room." She turned and walked to the far end on the office and entered a small room. I saw a small table at the center of 4 chairs. She took one while I took the opposite. "Thank you for the Can we get on with this?" she said. I paused and counted to 10 in my head. "You had a chance to read the preliminary toxicology report?" She yawned. "Yeah, all standard stuff." I waited for more. "And?" She looked bored. "And what?" "I'd like a little more than standard stuff, please." She sized me up. "Was it your father or mother?" "Pardon? Which one was black?" Now that was from left field. "What does that have to do with—" "It was your father. I see Asian too. Philippines or Polynesian, that would be your mother." "Dr. Randers, please, can we stick—" She slammed her hand down hard on the table and yelled, "Don't interrupt me when I'm talking!" That took me by surprise. She continued, "The male subject had a cocktail of ingredients in his blood. APPV, cannabis, caffeine. Most interesting this." She paused and thought for a few seconds. "He had been drinking the night before, couldn't tell what, but it was at least 40 proof. Then he smoked marijuana followed by bath salts. Meth came later. He was probably coming off a meth high before takeoff." "He had— What did I say about— I was there. I was on that flight." She reflected and changed her demeanor. "Really? How did he act just before?" "What?" "It's a simple question. It doesn't require much thought. You were a witness. I want to know his behavior moments before he raged." I was so mad I wanted to slap her. I was right. Very arrogant bitch hijacking my interview. She studied my face and smiled. "Miss Bechard, the UN is asking me for help. Why are you hampering my willingness to help?" That was like cold water to my face. She leaned back and smirked. That started to piss me off even more. All of 5 minutes, she managed to control the interview. She jerked my emotions with surgical precision, and that bothered me. So, I decided to play along and supply her with lots of rope. I leaned back as if I were defeated. "His eyes were off." She cocked her head. "That is hardly scientific. More precise, please." Dilated pupils, watery eyes, dull expression, but he was very conversational, not agitated. She thought about that. "And he wasn't aggressive until after the plane took off?" I nodded. "He went into the lavatory. A few minutes after that, he raged. I don't know if he removed his clothes before or after he came out. I heard him roar." "Roar?" "Yeah, roared." "Was he hypersexual?" "What?" "Pay attention, please. Did he try and rape anyone?" "No, just completely and totally angry. He first bit into a woman's skull and cracked bone. One of the passengers gave him a pretty good hit to the head. He brushed it off and broke his neck with a punch." A long moment she closed her eyes. Minutes went by. Then, "It's the— What else?" "He withstood a 1,000,000-volt stun to the neck and several shots in the torso. The bullets to the brain stopped him." "It's a variant." I just looked at her. It's a variant of the APPV substance. The meth and cannabis negated each other. Interesting. I'll have to think about that one. But the rage was not from him coming off the meth. I noticed an increased level of islet beta cells. The subject's glucose levels, before death, topped 600. His pancreas and liver went into overdrive. Fascinating. His liver was secreting large amounts of glucose, and the pancreas was pumping large amounts of insulin. That probably drove his core temperature up. There were high levels of epinephrine in his bloodstream. That makes sense. What I find disturbing is his testosterone levels were normal. Someone with that much rage should have elevated levels. I would have to check for monoamine oxidase deficiency. I didn't see a report on metal levels, but I would bet the subject had low levels of zinc in his brain. Copper level would probably be high. I pretty much followed her. I let her ramble a few more minutes, but I got what I came for. She talked as if she were comparing what happened to what she thought should have happened. Can this happen again? I interrupted. She scowled intensively. What did I tell you about I did it again. Can this happen again? Yes or no? Her cheeks turned red, and she snatched the folder I was holding. She angrily waved it in my face and yelled, "Haven't you been paying attention? Of course this can happen again. It's a variant, a manufactured drug. My goodness, how stupid can you be? A variant like this can tip the scale." She stopped and placed the folder back on the table. She did not apologize for taking it in the first place. Now it was my turn. She reached the edge, but pulled herself back. I was going to bring her forward again and watch the fall. Top or bottom? What? Please pay attention. Top or bottom? What kind of question is that? You like it from behind, don't you? The light bulb came on, and she realized what I was talking about. That is none of your... It's a simple question. Yes or no. You like it from behind. You don't swallow, but you rub it on your face. She tried to slap me. I easily caught her hand and squeezed. Stop it! That hurts! You are a silly, arrogant bitch. You have issues. How dare... I squeezed tighter, and she nearly cried. I think you have something to do with this variant. I watched her face closely and caught her first expression. Guilt. She recovered quickly, but not fast enough. She yanked her hand away. Don't come in here goose-stepping. I'm an American citizen. You've no authority over me, and I resent your pathetic attempt at bullying. Get the fuck out of my office, chick. Suddenly, the door opened, and Guy stepped in. Dr. Reanders, is everything okay? Dr. Reanders tried to stare me down. I was ready this time, and had the upper hand. I could kick her ass, and she knew it. She broke first, in front of Guy, and that had to hurt. She hissed, "Get out of my office before I call the And what? No jurisdiction over me. For someone smart, you're pretty dumb." She turned full red. I stepped toward her and she backed away. The expression on her face was totally priceless. She stormed out of the conference room and out into the main hallway. Doors slammed as she went further into her domain. Guy looked at me and sweetly smiled. He said, "She can be such a bitch sometimes. Looks like it'll be high drama around here, but it was worth seeing it." And he did that dirty little laugh of his. I took the crushed folder and walked out. It only took me a minute to reach my car. I fed the auto parking meter my credit card and paid for the time I had parked. Just as I turned onto the main street, my cell phone rang. My unlisted cell phone. The caller ID was blank, which I didn't think possible. I let it ring a few times and answered. "You've made me very angry, you cunt." The call ended. I thought the voice sounded like Reanders. A minute later, my cell rang again. The caller ID read, "Arrogant bitch." I answered, "Dr. Reanders? I am very upset with you." I looked at the phone for a second, then placed it back to my ear. And I'm supposed to what? Is your real name Karen Bechard? Or is it Paula Haggard? Or Linda Holt? I could play that game too. Dorothy, you are not allowed to call me by my first name, Mutt. Mutt. Now she was getting personal. Hang up now and I'll forget you called me names. Mutt, you crossed the line. You know you are talking to a UN representative. I'm talking to nothing. You invade my space and bully me. I ended the call and dialed Vadnez. This just got out of hand. The phone rang once, then dropped. I pulled over and dug out my official mobile. It rang once and dropped. The signal was at full strength for both phones. Just then, both phones rang. I answered one. You've embarrassed me, and that is unforgivable. I yelled, You're a nut job. There was a long pause, then. The streetlight in front of you is green. It'll change from green to yellow to green again. I looked up and saw the light she was talking about. It indeed did change from green to yellow back to green. The realization I was in over my head was starting to sink in. Karen, I told myself, you pissed off a spooky genius. Be afraid. I could tell she was speaking with clenched teeth. I am going to teach you a lesson, you fucking mutt. Never mess with me. Never. Damn, I thought. Am I supposed to fear for my life now? This turned unreal. I thought for a few minutes and decided to go back to Reander's office. At one traffic stop, the light turned from red to green, back immediately to red. She was letting me know I was being watched. I tried calling Vadnez again. It rang once, then dropped. Then I had a lucky break. I remembered a payphone on the corner of Amsterdam and West 133rd Street. It was just on the West 133rd Street side of City Gourmet Deli and Grocery, a corner store and not too far from me. I drove without signaling, caught traffic, and opted to park. I'd deal with the ticket later. I walked about a quarter mile when I realized Reanders had tapped into the remote camera throughout the city. It was my luck that NYC hadn't installed many remotes on this end. I suppose she could find some business and home security cams and tap into them, but NYC is big. After 30 minutes of walking, I reached the phone. It was in good condition. I dialed our hotline. I exhaled when I got a second and third ring. Cortez picked up. Cortez speaking. Agent KB031174. I got a sitch. A few seconds later. Vadnez thought you would call in. What's the scale? Bastard, I thought. He suspected Reanders all this time. Off the chart. Mobile's out. Hey, is Kitty on assignment? Vadnez gave her the rest of the week off. Anything imminent? Only at me. I'm requesting watch over Rogue. Legal taps if possible. And variant confirmed. Rogue could be the original. Will relay. KB, good flying. Sucky landing. Hey, I'm here talking to you. What more is needed? Point. BTW, more reports like the plane. My blood went cold. No shit. Yes shit. 12 in the last hour. Nothing like Miami, all on the ground. Noted. Out. I hung the phone up. I flagged down a cab and made my way back to Reander's office. Guy was still at his desk. He looked up. Miss Bechard, Reanders is currently in a meeting. She said you would return and give you this folder. It was thick, probably 50 pages. I took it and sat on the couch, in front of a fresh cup of coffee and cookies. I gave Guy a look. He shrugged. She can be scary accurate most times. I nodded and opened the folder to the first page. It was a copy of my birth certificate. The second page was a fake death certificate. It had today's date on it. The subsequent pages were a collection of photos of me from youth to now. She had various documents on me as well. Kindergarten to college to my army days to working at the UN. Everything. My life in a folder. I felt violated, and that pissed me off. Reanders, super genius, pushed the wrong buttons. I was not pissed. I was livid. She thought to have me fear for my safety. She tried to intimidate me. The stupid bitch. How dare she invade and expose me so raw? I must have been scary looking. Guy was on the phone. He said a few words and hung up. I turned on him so fast he barely stifled a shriek. I was at his desk before he knew it. "Office! Where? Now!" Guy was pale and had the deer in the headlights look. "2 doors down. It's the right one." I stormed out the office and stumped my way to the second door. Rhiander's super genius made a mistake. She miscalculated, and now reckoning day was upon her. Rhiander's super genius. Wrong. Rhiander's super fool, super idiot, super dumbass, super gonna get her ass kicked was more like it. I made it to the door and stopped. I wasn't so out of control that I would barge right in. That would have been dumb on my part. So far, Rhiander's had been one step ahead. I looked around the hallway and spotted 2 corner cameras. Both were pointed at me. I came off my rage and my adrenaline level dropped. I turned the knob and the door opened smoothly. I let it open wide before I stepped in. A second door was about 10 feet away. The floor leading up to the door was polished wood. A sofa was on the right side of the room. It looked well used. An oak desk was on the other side. It had a huge screen monitor on top. There were lots of books stacked at various heights around the desk. I had some choices to make. Open the other door, leave, or investigate. I chose to investigate. I looked around and couldn't find any obvious signs of cameras. I spotted a book by one of the sofa legs. The cover looked familiar. As I picked up the book, I realized the sofa was not for sleeping when working late at night. I delightfully thought maybe Guy was by. The book definitely looked well read. There were various thick crease spots along the spine that indicated most read areas. I opened the book to one of the areas and giggled. I was right. Rhiander's liked it from behind. The book was the Kama Sutra illustrated. Rage or rage not. Do not try. I sat on her sofa, read, and giggled. It tickled me to think that maybe I'm derailing her plans. I could imagine her fuming because I hadn't walked through that second door looking to kick butt. I turned another page and read. A few minutes later, Rhiander's came out of the second door. She hovered over me as I read. I looked up, smiled, and said, "Join me, look away, or fucking do something." She stared at me for a few seconds. "Miss Bechard, I want to show you something." Her emotions were in perfect check. "I find your sofa quite comfortable. Does Guy ride you often on it?" She paled. "I know he's gay, but money is money. Do you clench or suck him off as a reward?" She was so mad that she started to shake. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like to apologize for my behavior." I closed the book, got up, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Apology will tentatively be accepted when given." She worked her mouth into different expressions. She finally said, "Very well." She reached her hand out in a handshake. I stared at it for nearly a minute and shook it once. It had some lotion on it. I still wasn't sure if I won that battle or not. "Please follow me into my lab. I have something to show you related to your questioning." She turned and started to walk. I stood fast. "Tell me now." She froze, turned, and said, "It's more data on the variant. Because of security reasons, I can only reveal so much." I wasn't convinced. "Among other things, it was supposed to be an endurance enhancer. If you want more, follow me. If not, please leave." I hesitated, then started to leave. She blurted out, "Your boss called and reminded me of my contractual obligations." I followed her through the second door into a small chamber. It was more like a large closet. Towels hung on one side and a sink on the other. She stepped up to the sink and washed her hands. As she was drying them, she thought for a second and said, "Sorry, old habits. It had nothing to do with the handshake. You probably should wash yours as well." I did, but I started to feel warm. I looked over to Reanders. She was slowly drying her hands. My eyesight started to narrow. Reanders leaned in close and said, "Miss Bechard, you are not looking well. Is something the matter?" I turned to choke her skinny little neck, but couldn't hold onto the right one. A few seconds later, I blacked out. "I'm spanking your ass the first chance I get," was my last thought. I woke up in the middle of being tied to an old wooden chair. There were several men in lab coats standing around holding clipboards. Another two had just finished tying my waist to the chair. Amateurs. Not one could tie a decent knot. Reanders had her back to me, working at a nearby desk. I surprised the two men and knocked their heads together. The other three froze. I flexed hard, grabbed the top few rope turns, and lifted. The entire wrap became slack. I reached out and grabbed Reanders by her bun. She yelped, "What the?" I spun her around and gave her several hard slaps to the face. Then I lifted her lab coat over her head and bent her over my knee. She dropped easily into place. In one motion, I pulled her pants and panties down to her knees and spanked hard. Her ass was very soft and smooth. Immediately, her cheeks turned red. She now had a dozen handprints on both cheeks. I briefly enjoyed the view, and I was about to give her another dozen when strong arms grabbed me. Guy said, "I can't believe you let her do that to the doctor." Reanders tumbled off my knees and heavily landed on the floor. She got up, embarrassed. Her face cheeks were just as red as her butt cheeks. She slapped me as hard as she could. I laughed. "Dorothy, you spend too much time in the lab and on your knees. The gym, I say. The gym." She hit me harder. I felt that one. I said, "Better. Don't stop at the face. Follow through." She did, and the slap stung. She did it several more times. Then she held her hand and rubbed the center of her palm with the other hand. "Not used to beating people up, I see. Will someone shut this bitch up?" One of the males gagged me with a cloth. Guy instructed the others on how to tie a knot. Within minutes, my arms, legs, chest, and hands were tied to the chair. Reanders had composed herself and went back to her desk. She walked over to a small refrigerator on one of the workbenches. "You know, Miss Bechard, you should consider yourself lucky. You'll be the first human to test this out." She had a metal canister in her hands. She slowly opened the top and poured a glowing light blue liquid into a glass beaker. She recapped the container and placed it back into the refrigerator. She carefully placed the beaker on the table and slid some thick gloves over each hand. "This is not scientific, but you know what? I don't care. I hate you so much I hope this mixture is a failure and kills you." I tried to escape, but the knots were too good. "At best, you'll feel euphoric before pain hits, but you'll have an incredible amount of strength and endurance for hours. At worst, you'll die in horrible pain." She picked up a remote and pressed a button. I was hit with high voltage. "If you struggle again, I'll fry you. Try and escape? I'll fry you. Survive? I'll fry you." She smiled and seemed satisfied. She handed the remote to one of the three males with the clipboards. Wrong move number 1. "I created the variant. It was a total failure, you know. Unfortunately, one of my former assistants leaked the variant out on the street. The idiot kept a blog. The one I produced gave the user enormous strength. The side effect was mindless aggression. The subject you encountered had some control over his faculties. With this new batch, I scaled down the aggression, but kept the strength. Adding a meth variant and cannabis extracts may be the missing ingredients. You, my annoying gumshoe, will be the first test subject." I rocked the chair in an attempt to loosen the ropes. Reanders put her face inches from mine. Her breath was that of coffee. "I hate you so much. Success or not, you won't live to talk. Because you are a hothead, I can easily fake your death in many ways and make it look like it was your idiotic self that did it. And no, your Vadnez did not call me." She let that sink in. She stood up and flipped a few switches on some machines and monitors to the side of me. She had the other two stooges attach wires to me. She walked over to the table and picked up the beaker of rage in one hand. A small sponge at the end on a long-neck surgical scissor was in the other. "This new batch doesn't require injection or ingestion. It's topical." I bucked the chair. Reanders backed away. "Guy, hold this silly bitch still, please." He reached out to grab me, and I pivoted on the back left leg. I bucked up and landed the right front leg on his instep. His head came down, and I flipped my head up. His arms flung out, knocking Reander's beaker of rage into her face. I pivoted several more times and was able to stand on my feet. I pushed off using my toes and had enough lift to rotate the chair 45 degrees to the floor. I landed hard. Reander screamed in pain. I removed the tied, broken pieces from my arms and legs and ripped off all that wiring that had been attached to me. I spotted my purse and grabbed it. The Glock was still there. Reanders was having a hard time, though. She was curled up in a ball, moaning. Her staff surrounded her. One reached down to touch her. Her hand whipped out and caught him by the collar. "You didn't push the button," she growled. He tried to escape. "You didn't push the button!" She stood up and backhanded him. He went limp and crumpled to the ground. She turned toward me, her face twisted up in rage. "Now that was fucking dumb," I replied. "Of you it was. What you expect, psycho?" Her eyes snapped wide open. I just pushed the wrong button. She shoved the others out of her way and came at me like a freight train. I dodged several wild swings, but got hit on the fourth one. It hit my right arm. The hit was nothing like before. This one hurt. She was wild and random with her swings. Most I could block. Some I couldn't. I went on the attack and rained punches and kicks down on her, none effective enough to put her down. I decided the next best course of action was to run. I nearly reached the door when she grabbed me by the collar and jerked hard. I flew back into her watching and now surprised staff. I pulled my Glock out. I was in the process of aiming when it was snatched out of my hand. I scrambled for cover when someone stumbled on top of me. I felt two more bodies. Then their bodies jerked up and down with each bark of my Glock. I purposely keep a magazine with only 5 low-velocity rounds in it when I'm in a densely populated city. I would continue that practice. "Are you dead yet, mutt?" I didn't move. Click, 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 click. She tossed my gun to the side and walked out of the room. I counted to 10 and started breathing again. I opened my eyes and caught Guy's cold, dead stare. Such a waste on all levels. I pulled out from under the pile. Guy and 2 others dead. A third had his head at an awkward angle. The last 2 were missing. My clothes were dirty and had some blood on it, but not enough to think I went to a massacre. I found my Glock and purse and headed downstairs via the stairwell. Once outside, I called Vadnez. This time, he picked up. "Miss Bechard, are you all right?" "I'm adding kitten kissing to my list. Dr. Reanders has now gone psycho." "Please explain." "She created the variant, but a former assistant leaked it out. However, she tried to test a new variant on me. Long story short, it got on her. We need CDC on this one. The substance is topical. Her back office is now a morgue." I made it downstairs and ran out the lobby. One of the building security guards yelled something at me. I ignored him and rushed outside. "She escaped and I'm trying to find her now. She is quite dangerous, but not berserker so." "Understood. I'm alerting the local authorities now. By the way, there have been 10 new reports, all in the LA area. Please use extreme caution." "Vadnez, you know me. I'm always." "Rattling cages, causing chaos and mayhem sooner than later. Yes, I do know you, Miss Bechard. Please keep the collateral damage to a reasonable level. Accounting is sending me hate emails." Did I hear a smile out of that? He disconnected. I came out the front end near a Subway sandwich shop and ran to the corner while talking to Vadnais. I spotted Reanders halfway down the block. She had just headbutted someone in a Dodge Charger. She pulled a man out through the side window and tossed him across the street. I popped the spent clip out of the Glock and reloaded with a full clip. Too late. She sped past me, headed up East 118th Street. I spotted a man next to a parked smart car. I ran over to him. "UN Agent Karen Bechard." I showed him my ID. "I need your car." He said, "Yeah, right. You kidding me?" Then I showed him my gun. "Get in the passenger side or get out of my way." He slid over to the passenger side and handed me his keys. I gunned the engine and popped the gear into drive. "If I total this one, I'll have my boss buy you a new car." He snapped on his seatbelt. "If I live through this, I want a Tesla Model S." East 118th Street was a one-way street big enough for one car with parking on both sides. Traffic was light as Reanders crossed rapidly over Madison. The light was still green for me, so I stomped on the accelerator and zipped past other cars. Reanders, however, muscled her way through traffic. She sideswiped several cars, causing small pileups. I took the sidewalk and easily maneuvered past all the chaos. I was catching up when she made a sudden left turn on Park Avenue. I overshot and decided to catch her by way of Lexington. I made the left turn and drove on the sidewalk. Lexington traffic was moving in the opposite direction. "Holy shit, lady! Who taught you how to drive?" I just crossed 119th Street when I caught sight of the tail end of her car. School was still in session, so I didn't have to worry about kids. I was just about to cross 120th when she flashed just in front of us. She was looking right at me as she slid across the intersection. She was trying to hit us. I made a sharp right and followed. Third came up, and she took the left fast. "Watch out!" my passenger yelled. I missed an old man on a walker. "Thanks. Hey, what's your name?" He clenched the dashboard and looked terrified. "Hey," I said loudly. "I do this all the time. What is your name?" "Andy. Andy is my name. Holy lady!" "Call me Karen." We swerved right, then left. Reanders was clipping cars and causing crashes in the process. I wondered where she was headed to. Then I heard the sirens. NYPD was near. We made it to the end of 3rd and made the right onto East 128th. She was making her way to 2nd Avenue when an M15 bus pulled out of the depot. She tried to avoid the bus, but it was too late. The Dodge hit the passenger front tire dead center. Airbags deployed inside. I slid the smart car to a stop and jumped out. Reanders staggered out as I reached her. She shook off her daze and started to rage. I was prepared this time and kicked her squarely in the chest. She lost her breath, but swung at me, a near miss. I came in close and kneed her in the crotch. I spun and kneed her in the temple. She dropped to her knees, and I finished her off with an elbow to the head. A killing blow that should have ended the fight. She took the hit and dropped to the ground. Seconds later, NYPD was upon us. I yelled out, "UN Agent Bechard!" Several more officers ran up to us, guns drawn. "My ID is in that smart car over there." An officer bent down to check Reander's pulse. I said, "Be careful, she's high." He pulled his hand back. Reanders grabbed it and pulled hard. His wrist broke. She grabbed his gun and was about to shoot when I knife-chopped her in the throat. The gun dropped, and several other cops rushed to her. It took a total of 10 to hold her down. Moments later, it was over. Reanders was in the back seat of a squad car wearing 6 handcuffs. They had to place handcuffs on her ankles as well. Andy walked up to me with my purse in hand. "Karen, that was some tough shit you put me through. Fuck, that was tight." I took my purse. "Thanks. Some days are better than others." Just then, my official cell rang. It was Vadnais. "Karen speaking." "Miss Bechard, I see everything has ended well, with minimal damage." "Yay for the good guys. There is a certain car I use that will have to be repaired. Replacing it would be better." There was a long pause.
Please fill out the necessary paperwork when you get back. I have some disturbing news and a new assignment."
"About this?" Vadnez interrupted.
"Only over secure lines. I'll expect you back in an hour. Your car is waiting in the employee parking lot."
"Thanks." I ended the call. I looked up to Andy. "Andy, thanks for the use of your car. Here's my card. First chance you get, leave a message with name, address, insurance company name, policies, yada yada yada. The system will walk you through everything." I turned to an officer. "Is there someone available to take me to the UN building? A ride would really be appreciated."
He said, "Sure, Agent Bechard. You can ride with us. The lieutenant just released us."
30 minutes later, I was sitting in Vadnez's office with dirty and blood-stained clothing. I knew that Vadnez was fighting his inner demons, but I enjoyed the thought of pushing his neat freak button.
"Miss Bechard, you could have changed into clean clothing first."
"Boss, I'm a dutiful soldier. You asked me to be here as soon as possible. Well, this is as soon as possible." He coughed once. He took a folder that was neatly stacked on top of several more.
"Reanders was contracted by the U.S. government to create a performance-enhancing drug that also increased endurance. It looks like she was very close. I should be getting a report from the CDC by week's end. I asked for a meeting with the CDC director and head of UNODC."
And now that I made chaos sooner than later, America won't be getting their new drug.
"On the contrary, they've got it, and for free."
He handed me the folder.
"Your new assignment. Holders can finish up here."
The cover had a picture of Los Angeles. "When do I leave?"
"Tomorrow morning. Your ticket is inside the folder."
I opened it, and sure enough, LA coach. I'll be upgrading, thank you very much. I got up and started toward the door.
"Miss Bechard?"
I stopped and turned. "Yes, sir?"
"The variant is worse than we thought. Los Angeles looks to be ground zero. So far, 35 cases in the last 3 days. Be very careful."
I nodded. "I'm always."
"Rattling cages, yes."
He finished. He cared. I walked out the door. I was halfway down the hall when I placed a call to LA. Jim didn't pick up, so I left a message on his voicemail. "Hey, love, I'll be back in town sometime tomorrow. So ask her to sleep elsewhere and hide her panties better this time." I hung up and laughed. I knew Jim was seeing someone else. I couldn't blame him. I'm hardly in LA, and I'm just as horny and flirtatious as he is. More so, actually. So, who am I to get upset if he had another girl? Hell, if she's pretty, I'd do her myself. In fact, Mary had been on my mind. I had planned on taking her panties and then some. I was outside, heading toward the employee parking area. Cortez was on my cell.
"I hear you had fun."
"You know, I always have fun." He laughed.
"For others, your kind of fun is a death sentence."
"It's karma," I said. "Pure and simple. Kiss puppies and babies, help the elderly, wish the best for everyone."
"Like I said, a death sentence for others. Anyway, I just sent you Mary's home and cell number. She finished debriefing and the airline gave her several weeks off. She's based out of LA.
"Really?"
"And get this, she has a ticket to LA tomorrow morning."
He paused. "You got me my ticket, didn't you?"
"Always got your back, girl. Always."
"Thanks, Cortez. See you when I get back. Lunch, your choice."
"I see lobster in my future. One more thing."
"Yes?"
"Pack tactical."
"Really? That serious?"
"There's a lot of movement at all levels. The US may be mobilizing. It's the end of day scenario."
"Shit."
"And then some."
After several rings, Mary answered. "Hello?" "Mary, this is Karen." She rushed out. "Karen, oh my God. I was hoping you'd find a way to reach me. I tried getting your number, but I couldn't find anyone at the UN building who would even acknowledge UN agents." Mary, you got me now." "Oh, Karen, I'm leaving for LA in the morning. I was afraid I'd never hear from you." "What are you doing right now?" "Just finished packing. I'm too worn out for TV." "May I pick you up for that dinner?" Of course, but I have an early flight. So do I. Huh? We're on the same flight. Want to do a sleepover? Say yes, please. She giggled. I'd love to do a sleepover. Sleepover was better than I had hoped for. Mary was a tigress, and she made me her gazelle. Jim is a good kisser, but there is something about kissing another woman. It's the same, but different. The taste is different. So is the texture and smell. It's the total package that keeps me in the game. Otherwise, I'd stay on one side of the fence.
Thank you for listening to the first half of Rage, written by J. Karen Jones and narrated by Lauren Sweet. If you liked the story so far, please like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to stay up to date with new audio story releases. Until then.
She will always protect us. The shield we need. The strength to lead. Her fight is to keep us safe, defeating those full of hate. In dangerous times, when she uses her mind, the world explodes around us. The madness of people infects the sanity of the world. Hate, anger, jealousy, pain, and sorrow. Overwhelmed mortals not consumed by fright.